Hello and welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm Nick Roan, Director of Technology for the Asset Leadership Network, and I am excited for a special program today with one of our organizational members, Kahua, and one of the organizations they work with, and a bunch of speakers. But before we get to them, we just want to thank our patron members, Jacobs, Mantech, Onuma, ABS Quality Evaluations, and CGI, as well as all our organizational members, especially Kahua, for bringing a cool program like this to our audience, and also for all our organizational members for helping make programming like this possible. And with that, we have some upcoming events. Next Tuesday is the start of our book club discussion with CEO Jim Dieter, and the book is Nexus by Yuval Noah Harari. That's an awesome one, and hopefully you saw last Thursday's program where we previewed that discussion a bit, or you can see highlights on our YouTube channel. And March 26th, there's a National Institute of Building Sciences program. Mike Bordenero, Executive Director for the Asset Leadership Network, welcome.
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, maybe you'd like to preface this March 26th program and then mention next week's Thursday at 3 as well.
Yes. So this NIBS program is part of their series on digital twins, which they are going big with this year. They see that as a huge benefit for building owners and the consultants who work for them. So it's another one in their series, and they're going to be introducing more throughout the year. We really want to support that because the digital twins are twins of the assets that are in the building. The building itself is a twin, and that's an asset, but then they digitally twin all the assets in it. So a lot of people talk about the difference between facility assets and personal property assets, equipment assets. Well, digital twins brings them all together. And I think that's a very important aspect of asset management. And then next week, the 27th, for the Asset Leadership Network, we're going to have Nicholas Phillips, the president of MACE, a Australian consulting firm. And Nicholas was one of the founding members of the Asset Management Council in Australia, and he was a consultant to the state of Victoria, Australia, in creating an asset management framework by which organizations in the state of Australia can determine the accountability of their asset management plans. It's a very important framework for fulfilling obligations, legislation obligations, but also in assisting people in knowing what they have to do, how to proceed, what the next actions to be taken are. So I'm really excited about that. That's going to be part of the series, but we'll get into that next week. Let's get going with this program. As Nick said, it is very special. We're going a full hour with a case study from Kahua and the people who work with Kahua to ensure the San Juan Unified School District gets the information from their designers, contractors into the operation management of the building. So Nicholas, welcome back.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Nick. It sounds like we've got lots of Nicks and Nicholases in this week and next. So I'm Nicholas Johnson. I'm the chief evangelist with Kahua, and thank you for letting me be part of this today. We're proud supporters and members of ALN, and just glad to be here today. This is especially exciting because, as Mike said, this is a presentation that the team from San Juan Unified and VM3 Consulting did several months ago. Well, actually in January. And with pride, I tell the network that Mike was so impressed with what he heard that he wanted this presentation done just for ALN. So yes. I'm really happy to be here. Kahua is a project management information system. Let's be clear, we're project folks. We're before operations. That's where we've made our lifetime living. But a couple years ago, we got in touch with Mike and the Asset Leadership Network because we had a vision that, frankly, we'd been doing it wrong for a long, long time. We all knew that there was a problem with handing over asset information at the end of a project. Kahua and our founders had a vision to solve that problem. We started talking about it 2 years ago. We started building it. about a year and a half ago. And this year we're able to show you results of that. That's what today's presentation is really all about. So if it's okay, Mike, with further ado, we'll just jump right in.
Please go right ahead.
All right, I'm gonna attempt to share my presentation with you. Let's make sure that you all can see that. Mike, do you see the presentation document now, or speakers?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Very good
excellent.
pictures of all of you.
So I will quickly introduce the stars of the show are Cherie Chenoweth. Cherie's with San Juan Unified School District. She's a business manager there and has done some incredible things to help her district achieve the goals that she set out to do with us, envisioning out this idea of asset-centric project management. She's joined today. We're joined today by Christine Mulholland and Jason Villanueva. These two started their firm last year to help in this process, to help school districts and their other clients in California better transition data from design and construction projects into operations. They do a lot more than that, but they're here today to share their expertise as they have learned and related that to the San Juan Unified School District projects and programs. So Cherie, Christine, Jason, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad you're all with us today. We did this presentation a month ago. I'm going to see if I can forward my slides now. I got to learn how to do that while sharing. Sorry, folks. Give me 1 second.
While Nick is getting that together, I am putting the emails for Christine and Jason in the chat. You'll want to save them because I'm sure you're going to want to reach out and talk to them later after seeing how this all works together.
Okay, here we go. Again, we call this asset-centric project management. It's a methodology and approach for collecting the same information that we've always collected on a project, but doing it in a way that can automatically and perhaps instantly be passed over to the tools that operators need. Whether you're operating a facility, a utility, a network for transportation, what you're really building in a project, which is where we live, project creates assets, okay? Assets that we're going to turn over after the project's over to you operators. In order to operate those, you're going to need data for those. So this is about how we capture that data during those phases, automatically feed it into your systems. And then some of the benefits we have even post-project, things that we'll talk about today, like the ability to take that information and automatically do facility condition assessments and master planning, since you have that data in hand. So I think, Jason, you're going to talk us through this slide and tell us about how this all starts for a school system.
Sure. So generally speaking, Cherie kind of approached us and said, hey, I have this vision. And at the same time, Kahua was developing something. So it kind of came at a perfect time. And it was literally just, how do we get all of this information so that it's being shared equitably across your construction or your capital planning teams and your O&M teams. And so part of what we had to do was rethink asset management and asset strategy, where even from a project execution perspective, the asset took center stage. So that's a new way of thinking for a lot of the folks that are doing, project management. It's the asset being the center of everything. And for us, that was the key that tied all of these other organizations together that generally have no stake in the work that they do, or that data is, that's being passed between those two or multiple groups. The common tie was the asset itself. So what we set out to do was to create a way to take the asset data and use it as our primary key, and then start tagging as much data as possible to it. So both from an FCA perspective, and then for planning and operations, and then generally to maintenance. And so what's nice is Kahua provided the perfect platform to do that, although it is a project management platform, but it's a platform that was so flexible that we could start doing other things inside of it. So what you kind of see here on the screen is a high level diagram of the setup in terms of how we created this asset centric mindset. It led with the technology here. And so what you're going to see here is that Kahua was a perfect repository for all that because, and being around other organizations, large and small, there's so many sources of data that are just all over the place. And so what we needed in order to start tagging and tracking assets across all of these different actions. For example, if it's a maintenance work order, how do we track that and tag it back to the asset? If it's part of scope on a project, how do we take that and tag it back to the asset so that it's memorialized and recorded? And Kahua was the perfect repository for all that. So not only are the capital planning or your project execution teams kind of the first entry, right? They're the first ones that are installing this asset. They're also going to be handing it off to your operations and maintenance. So they're going to be the first to have the opportunity to collect all the data, warranty information, manuals, stuff like that. So because Kahua was such a great plug for everything else, you could start plugging different applications into it. So let's say as an organization, you were using a different CMMS, you could plug that into Kahua and then have that data really transfer back and forth. So whatever activities you were doing in that CMMS, we could feed that data right back into Kahua or vice versa so that, you wouldn't have to necessarily change your system of record if you are already using one. The whole point of it was to be able to take applications like FCA or capital projects or even the scenario planning that Kahua has created or any other application that's out there that's not even created by Kahua and put them in one central place so that they can exchange data and so that we can start to tag assets with all the different activities that happen around that asset, whether it's through, again, construction or through maintenance.
So that's an important point. This asset repository, listed here as Kahua Asset Manager, goes back and forth, you said, between CMMS. So we've delivered this information automatically at the end of a project, so you can start up your facility with the data that you need. But then months or years from now, when you do maintenance or a work order on a piece of equipment, it can go back into this central repository. So we're continually tracking that.
Yeah, that's correct. So, all the documents that are generated during construction are going to be handy at some point, especially when you're doing maintenance on an asset. And a lot of times that stuff gets lost. It gets lost in filing cabinets and stuff like that. Most documents now are also delivered digitally, right? So again, Kahua makes that perfect repository for all that so that if I'm in my CMMS and I know that it's connected to Kahua, there are ways to figure out, hey, this document is actually stored over here and link directly to it and get directly to it. And vice versa, if I'm scoping something out and I'm scoping out a specific location, I can pull up all the assets are there and what work has been done to it. Maybe I can modify my scope.
That's another good point. I talk about asset data, and I tend to think about a data field, a model number, a serial number, a capacity information. But you're mentioning documents as well. So I'll invite Christine and Cherie as well. That it's more than just a few data fields that your operational database needs. There's other information that's helpful long after the project's done, but it's information we gather during the project.
Yeah, so actually on the next slide, you're going to see a lot of good points, but one of the biggest ones that I would say for us is warranties. When does the warranty start? And when does the warranty end? So then that way, when our maintenance and operations team is out there, they know not to work on that asset if there's a warranty that's tagged to it, so we don't lose our warranties. So that is a big, I would say, component for us, because from construction to maintenance, if you don't have that dialogue, you're always looking it up in books.
That's a great point. I'm gonna tell a story, but I want to very quickly. I talked to another school district, another California school district, Cherie, one of your neighbors, and the director of project management there, of capital programs there, told me a story about walking out on one of their high school sites and seeing one of the maintenance workers in a hole, and he had a pump torn apart, and the worker politely and innocently asked the director, "Do you know if this pump's under warranty?" And since it was torn apart, the director simply answered, "Well, it's not anymore." And indeed, it had been under warranty, but he invalidated the warranty by opening it up. So let me back up, though, and ask a question. Jason or Christine, where does all this, I understand what the information is now, but how do we get started defining what we're going to collect along the way? Do we start talking with the operators about what they're going to need eventually to operate this new facility? How do you determine what it is we're collecting along the way?
Well, most of it, I mean, at least for this specific case, it's your standard closeout documents, and it's been touched upon already, but I think that's been the biggest pain point for a lot of clients that we work with, is that the closeout process, one, takes forever to do, and two, once they're complete, they really don't know what they have. So it's knowing what your maintenance and operations teams are going to need at the end of the day in order to maintain their facilities, like a lot of things that we've already talked about. So I think it's nothing special. It's nothing different than probably across all industries. It's just the organization and the mechanism of getting all that information and storing it in a space where it's easily accessible, because we all know if it's not easy, people won't use it. So it needs to be easy enough that it's not taking more time, that it's part of their everyday workflow, but now they can get more information out of what they're putting into their database.
And
So
Christine,
Mike, I'll ask you, I assume that anyone that would have an operational tool to manage maintenance and upkeep of assets, if they've got a database driven tool, I assume that they have an asset registry already. They already know what their assets are that they're going to want to take care of. Is that a fair
If they
assumption?
have that, but what we find frequently is most owners don't know all of what they have. But in this specific instance, this is an excellent example of ISO 55000 asset management in action, having a mission that Cherie stated, involving all relevant parties. So you're getting the information from the different people so that Jason and Christine can format it, and then Kahua being the place where it lives so people can have that easy access. It's an excellent approach to asset management, asset leadership.
Yeah, I'd also like to highlight on that. We had our FCA done, and we didn't originate that in Kahua, but now Kahua has an FCA app. And what we're going to be utilizing that for is that when we're out there and we do a job, if there's assets that have not been captured that we want to be captured more, we're going to be able to do that. And we're going to be able to put that into our system seamlessly and be able to capture that information as well. I think that, when you first start this project and you think about it, and just like us, we selected certain assets. You can go, at a high level or a low level. It's just, start out where you can get buy-in. That's what I would say. But then once you get that buy-in, now take it a step further and keep going with it. And that's where the FCA app is going to come in. And then that's where it's going to be able to add in more assets. And then we're going to have more tracking as we go. And we're no longer going to have to go out to a school site and figure out what all of our air conditioning units are.
Excellent. So in the facility, for those who don't have this information in place, a facility condition assessment might be the starting point then, because that's a snapshot where you go out and you do look at everything that you do. And I suppose, Cherie, that's a way that you could collect this initial data set?
Yes, so that is the initial way that you collect it if you don't have it. We started out not having it. So we needed to have everything assessed. However, the time that we did it, Kahua didn't have an FCA. So now we are using that app to add in the additional layers that we didn't have, or did not get captured. So, when we do like 200 projects a year, so we're always out at the school sites. And so we'll be able to capture that very quickly.
All right, that's a great place for us to transition. I want to just pause for a second, though, and remind the audience that the three experts on the panel are concerned about the facility after the project. Kahua, for our history, we've been concerned about the project. So again, we had an awakening and thought, we need to serve the owner, our client, much better and provide this information. And all we wanted to do was be able to feed let me back up for just a second. What we wanted to do primarily was to improve and perfect this asset data handover at the end of a project. That is the biggest point of contention. It's the biggest problem that we've, for years, turned over a thumb drive or some media with tens of thousands of PDFs and hundreds or thousands of spreadsheets, and owners have, for the most part, put that media, that thumb drive, in a drawer somewhere and forgotten about it. And then often gone and paid somebody to create the database that they need. And I know that I've said this to Mike. He's nodding his head now. I get an amen every time we talk about this.
Yes.
That's the problem that we wanted to solve. The beautiful thing about a platform as a service technology is it has allowed our ecosystem, it's allowed the industry to come on that and enable. And that's what we're going to talk about now, is this facility condition assessment we keep talking about. This is the highlight, if you will, of what we've done at San Juan. So I want to give the floor back to you guys. Talk about the facility condition assessment. Again, where you started, where you wanted to go, what the process was like.
So in a perfect world, I think what Nicholas was getting at is, in a perfect world, you're able to make your decisions off of data. But in the case of many, you don't even know where you're starting. You don't know how bad your facilities are. So that facilities condition assessment is really going to establish your baseline of all your assets, right? In the case of San Juan, the team, the facilities condition assessment team was directed to go out and really collect the asset information for everything that was deficient. So back to Cherie's point, now the district is having to collect as they go out and have new sites, document what's new, what wasn't deficient at the time of the original data capture. But for schools, for Cherie's district specifically, they've got over 65 school sites. So having an understanding of the condition of all their facilities is a daunting task. And for prior to this exercise, there was no centralized database. They didn't know what assets they had. They didn't know the conditions of their assets. They were literally just fielding, work orders for failing equipment, right? And having to scramble. And this is a school district. You can't just shut down school because your HVAC system shut down for the day, right? Like, we need to keep teaching these students all day. So the problem we had where we started was that everything was living in everyone's brains. The custodians, the principals, the M&O staff, they all knew what was failing, but the administration that was setting what projects were happening didn't know really where, the health of all their buildings. So what happened was that FCA, we then were able to see all the data, and we'll show you that view in a little bit, but having all that data at the fingertips of those that need to make those decisions really helped them put the money where they needed to make the most impactful change, right? Where they had the most deficiencies. That money spread out a lot faster and made more impact to where it was going. Now the district can be more proactive and not reactive, because they have a good database of everything that they have across all their sites. Not just the 60+ school sites, but they have other support spaces, district offices, M&O buildings. So there's a total, I think, of 82 sites across the whole district, 75 acres. So there's a lot of assets, and it was never easily digestible for anyone, because it was living in a book or a binder along with the overall facilities master plan. So we've taken all that information and we've put it into a database. We've extracted out the information or displayed it in a way that makes it easy for the end user to really understand what the health of their buildings are, and they can quickly navigate to each site, navigate to each asset, navigate to the cost of that asset, the status of that asset, what it's at, if it's going to expire or if it's going to fail likely in the next 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, 10+ years. So it's now giving the district the ability to let that asset drive their decisions, as opposed to a teacher saying, hey, my classroom's too cold all the time, or a parent saying, hey, my student's carpet in their classroom, it's dingy, right? Like a lot of those things, it's the squeaky wheel was getting the projects done, and now they have data to back up their decision making and make defensible decisions that are really what's in the best interest of the district. and maybe not what, the principal's been requesting. So it's provided a very handy tool, not just for planning out projects, but using the money in the most impactful and really where it should be spent.
Yeah, and then the other thing it also does for us is it allows us to group things together better and to know what our assets are. So like if we're at a school site, we can look at what's essential, what isn't, and then what is coming up and what's not. If we're at a school site and already doing a project, if there's something else that we should be grouping this with and doing and what needs to be done. So this is really when you see the final product of this, when we show you today, you're going to see how we can develop stuff like that.
Cherie, before we go there, will you tell me a little bit about that 3-ring binder? What did the facility condition assessment look like before? And just talk about the ongoing value of that.
So I think that's on the actual next slide for us, but we used to have what we call a book on the shelf, and it was our facilities master plan. We did it in 2014, and it was hard to update. It was literally that. It was a book on the shelf. So when we had that book and we had that binder, you would go through the pages really quick, and you would get to that site, and then you'd be like, okay, well, we did the paving, and we'd write it in the book. There was no way to make it electronic, and then God forbid if somebody actually asked us a records, or they requested something and asked us, like, how many paving properties did you pave this year or in the last 5 years? You'd have to flip through a book and figure out how many you've done. And it was a dream. This was the second in 2014. This was the second one that I had done for the district. This last one was the third one that I have done for the district, that I have been here that long. And it's just, after you've done it so long, Nicholas, and you have going through that book, you realize that this isn't the best way to track your assets. This isn't the best way to track how we're doing things. And the other thing that was very eye-opening for us was even when we had during COVID and we had to keep all of our air conditionings running, we couldn't tell people what the conditions of our air conditionings were and if they were going to last in the schools for the students to actually be in the room and keep them running. It just, we didn't have that information. We had to go to each site. Now try doing that 65 times. We don't have enough staff to do that. And then the air filters and, just the things that we had to do. It was very eye-opening. So this book on the shelf.
Just for clarity, Cherie, let me ask that you do a facility condition assessment so that you get a snapshot in time of what the condition of your assets are, what the condition of your facilities are. And I assume you do that as a school district. It's probably not different. And Mike, I'll ask you to weigh in after this. I assume you do that because you want to justify a round of funding so that you can make improvements to your capital infrastructure.
It's for school districts, it's not just to justify for funding, but it's also required. It is required for you to have a 5-year plan and to show what you have. And if you get money from the state or from the federal or anything like that, you have to show how are you going to maintain it once you build it.
Okay. So it does help with that initial justification. It has other value as well. And then it allows you to develop a master plan, or at least your next round of expenditures. It helps you prioritize those things.
Yeah, but Nicholas, I have to tell you, when the 2014 came out, the day it came out was already outdated.
Why is
Because
that?
we're rapidly doing projects.
Okay.
Well, one of the things, even this process, the original FCA data was collected starting February, I believe, 5th or 6th of 2024. And we are just now getting through all of the shared governance and approvals of that master plan. But the condition of those assets is already a year old. Now, those within the district, the board and the subcommittees, they don't realize that. Now, all of us, we realize that. And they were there, they just approved it, right? Last week at their board meeting,
on
it
the
was
11th.
officially approved. But now the legwork is, well, all right, that's all now old. Like, now what? Now what do we do? Now,
And
what is the true condition today? Because now we're planning on spending our next issuance of bond funds, and where do we spend it?
And Nicholas, we've opened up 2 brand new schools since then.
Yeah.
Wow. So the condition assessment very quickly becomes the outdated book on the shelf, as you said. And what did you pay for your last facility condition assessment that was done with a manual process?
1.5 million.
Wow.
Considering that's done every 5 years, but even after year 1, it's pretty out of date already.
And that is why I say it's so important to have something that is ongoing, and it's
Okay.
not just stale. It does not, assets don't just stop. I mean, they're constantly being used. So you have to keep track of them.
Mike, does this process sound typical for others in the industry? School districts are typical institutional owners, but there are a lot of other kind of institutional owners.
The problems are common among all building owner types. The solution is not. And that's why I was so excited to have you come and share what you've done. And I'm glad you're at the point where you have that level of success. And even though the information is already a year old, you have that information. You can get to it, you can update it. It's a lot easier than reaching for the elf on the shelf and writing on it.
Yeah, excellent. Cherie, who can we attest this quote to?
This is something I say.
It sounds like the entire team involved in your master plan, though, echoed that sentiment.
Absolutely.
All right, I think we're going to go into a bit of show and tell mode now. Is that right?
So here we
Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna play this video right now. Maybe we do that live as well, because I think that video goes on for quite a bit of time. But we can maybe jump to a dashboard, unless Jason wants to pull up the FCA live, but we could pull and kind of show you.
Yeah.
So we saw the binder on the shelf, you know, PDF looking thing on that screen. And now what does good look like, right? What did the team decide was the best way to display the information that we've got? And I can pull that up now if that makes the most sense for
It
everyone.
does.
It
Okay.
does. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so let me share. Only one presenter can share at a time. You might need to stop sharing first,
Okay,
Nicholas.
sorry. Yeah.
Or maybe I can replace you.
There you
Let me
go.
see. Okay, thank you. All right.
Not
Are
quite
you
there. Now it
Yes.
is.
Perfect. Okay. So we do have several pages. The navigation is up here at the top. The previous pages are really more specific to the facilities master plan, the process that we went through, how the sites are being scored in terms of, you know, the rubric that we're using, to stick with kind of school lingo. There's a rubric. These are the categories that each site was scored based upon. Guiding principles. All this stuff is very specific to our school program and the facilities master plan. We are taking the master plan and we're digitizing it down
So,
to. Yes.
Yeah, but this right here is the book on the shelf.
Yes, this part is very doesn't change, right? These things aren't going to change. What will be changing is when we get over to here. So this is our overall scoreboard of our deficiencies. This is our facilities condition assessment score. So we've got report cards for all of our campuses. Your school subjects are your building categories, and you got your grade percentages and your condition index scores for your facilities.
Okay,
But
Christine,
yeah,
if I can just jump in and ask a quick question. Cherie just said that was the book on the shelf, because
The
she also said
previous.
earlier that districts have to create that
they do.
moment in time, that snapshot condition
Mhm.
assessment. So you're still able to have that, yet keep the data live going forward. Is that
Yes,
right?
there's some data that won't change, right? Building or school site locations, enrollment, we will be updating annually to push the next year over, but you know, the data for 23-24 isn't going to change. So a lot of this stuff is, you're not going to change the acreage in most cases unless they're going to, you know, buy adjacent land. So a lot of this stuff is going to remain how it is. And the information that is going to drive the decision-making at the school district comes in these last pages here. And in the rubric, in the scoring criteria and the prioritization, like weight of these different categories, the facilities condition score is 60% of that weight. So the focus, it kind of makes sense, right? The focus is really on your level of your buildings, the quality of your assets. That's what's driving the condition of your building and the grade of your building. So if you're overall, if we look at an FCA and your school is a C minus, your C minus is because of all your deficiencies. Your deficiencies are 60% of the overall ranking of this school based off of our categories here. So these are all the categories. You get a certain number of points. So we had to create this whole scoring system. But the 60% of the score is coming from how healthy is your building. And this is the facility condition data that was captured. And now we're displaying it in a way where you can select your school, information will update. I want to find a school that has maybe a lot of critical items. So this has $10 million of critical items at Cottage Elementary. And now, instead of having to look through a PDF of it, look through maybe a very long Excel file and try to generate some pivot charts or visuals yourself, we've boiled it down to, here are some visuals that can help you plan. And this was developed and worked in conjunction with the district, but the data's all there. It could be displayed and slice and dice in any way that makes the most sense for your organizations. But essentially, classrooms, right? You're trying to teach these kids in the classrooms what is wrong in our classrooms. If I click on the bar for classrooms, all my other visuals, I'll back up again so we can watch it. But if I click this, these bars all reflect now the price, the costs in these different building systems or categories based off of my selection of classrooms. And now you could see my numbers. This was 10 million of critical. Now I see that 6 million or near 6 million in classrooms is critical. And down in my table below, it's telling me what all those items are. What were all those deficiencies? What is the cost? And this is where, for us, this is based off of 2024 costs. This was gathered in February of 2024. So we should have prefaced this with, this is the public facing dashboard. The district is going to be putting the dashboard up on their website for full transparency. Public school system, it's all public information, but we want to be able to communicate to the community that supported a large bond program, that here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing what we're doing at these different schools, rather than pump a bunch of money into the schools that are asking for the most thing. We need to focus on the schools that need the most help, right? So I can click on any of these bars. It's going to keep filtering my information for me. I can select on a different school. I can click on my high schools, find a high school in my list. This is a school, one of the schools that was just built over the, since we started this process. So there wasn't much for them to look at in terms of buildings. I believe there was an old site that was being modernized and then a brand new school. So a lot of this is going to get wiped out. The $16 million is going to get wiped out because we have a new school coming online. I always like to click on the visuals to get my information, to filter my information, but you also have filters up top if you wanted to select by a certain category. Maybe in some of these, the list can grow quite long if there's a bunch of categories and you could be scrolling. So you can select here, you could search from here. But this is your view and your quick access, because remember, if it's not quick and it's not easy, then it's not a very good tool for our end users to use. So in my mind, we think this is pretty quick and pretty easy to kind of visualize your data, see where your pain points are. But this is our facilities condition, or facilities condition assessment, or our deficiency data.
So can you hold on just 1 second on that slide? So one of the things, and this is the vision, so because I wanted to share the vision and the hope and the dream, was that we have all this information. Now, what do we do with it and how do we update it? In knowing my maintenance and operations people, knowing the people that are out in the field that are my handymen, I would like to say, and women, that they're not really into computers. We just got them on cell phones, for goodness sakes, you know, they finally have screens on their cell phones and they're not flip phones anymore. So I have to figure this out. And, you know, it's challenging and you have to have buy-in. You have to have people that buy in on this. So, because once you build this, you want to make sure that it can stay sustained, and it has to be easy. And that was one of the things that I talked to Christine and Jason a lot about, was that it has to be easy. If we make this difficult and they have to put in all this data or they have to do anything, forget it. It's not going to be updated. It's going to be old and it's going to be that book on the shelf again. So the simple thing is that in a project now in Kahua, these assets can be retired and new ones just get put in. It's that simple. And guess what? The construction team is already doing that. They're already doing that work. All we're asking you to do is just tag it. We're not asking you to do a whole lot, just tag it, put it in there and tag it. And so now they can see this, and as they're doing that, this gets updated while the project is going on. Now, the maps and the things that you see will be done once a year. We will have to do those, but in a school system, we already have to do that anyway, and we're already doing that. So that didn't matter to us, that we're already doing that yearly, and that is something that we do. But this part right here was super important to make sure that it was seamless, to get buy-in, to make sure that our data was staying updated. And that is how it's going to be updated. It's right through the projects. They're selecting these assets in the project in Kahua, they're tagging them, and then they're getting basically, oh, and we don't lose the data. Jason made sure we're not going to lose our data. We're going to have our old assets in there. We're going to have our new ones that are going to replace that. So all of that is happening. And I just wanted to share that because that's super important to know. And now all the warranty and everything is tagged to this asset.
Yeah, can I just paint a quick scenario? Imagine that you have scope to modernize a classroom or an HVAC system, and that'll be in 3 or 4 months. But let's say it goes down and emergency maintenance took care of that. They installed a new HVAC. It will update automatically here that a new HVAC has been installed. So now when they open up the scope, they'll see that those dollars are missing because guess what? It's already been replaced, which means I can probably replace that project with something else. So now my dollars go much further because I'm getting this information in real time, right? So as things are maintained, as things are replaced through the course of maintenance, the dollar figures here will change because it's all being done within a system, whether it's an existing CMMS that they're using and then it's connected to Kahua, or they're doing it in Kahua through Asset Manager. It's all updating in real time so that these dollars will continually fluctuate as they're being tagged to projects. They'll be taken off the menu essentially. Maintenance then will realize, oh, these are in projects. I don't have to touch these because they're going to get replaced. So it's that cross-sharing of information that has really made a huge difference here, and it's allowed us to plan to really maximize your dollar even further, both in maintenance and in capital construction.
So I've got a couple questions. One, I think I know the answer to. The other, I'm not sure, but I'll ask. Christine, you talked a bit about the facility condition assessment was 60% of the criteria for weighing how we're gonna make decisions going forward. I assume that criteria is something that the owner operator gets to build in and decide what's important to them and how they want to weigh those things. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, there were lots of discussions on, and there was many back and forths on what percentage to allocate to each of those categories. But what never changed throughout all those conversations was that the condition of the buildings was the highest priority. It was just a matter of how much percent. I think at one point it was up to like 70, and then something snuck in and stole 10% of it. But yeah, it was always, everyone always knew and is on the same page from the beginning that it really is based off of the condition of the assets. And then that has to be the highest priority. Other things like, do we have the programs that we need? High schools are supposed to have, you know, their gyms and multi-purpose rooms at elementary schools. Do those facilities have adequate programming spaces? So those types of things were the other factors that came into place, if there's state funding eligibility for that school site. But none of those compared to the weight of a deficiency or the condition of their buildings.
Okay, thank you. And the second thing, just for clarity for the audience, what you're showing us is an application called Facility Condition Assessment that was developed on the Kahua platform, like folks can develop an app for Android or iOS on their Apple phone. And you three led that development effort to get this built based on the actual need that was demonstrated at San Juan Unified. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And really the issue was, like Cherie kind of pointed out earlier, if this data doesn't get updated, it becomes the book on the shelf, just the digital version. So we needed an easy way for anybody to go out, especially if they're already going out and about in the sites, the building managers, any maintenance folks. Essentially, we built an app inside of Kahua where they can go in, select the app that they're looking at, especially if they're already in the area, and just give eyes on it. What condition does it look like? You know, because most FCAs are done visually.
Yeah.
Is there corrosion there? Is it breaking? Is it falling apart? And then update that information in the app, right? Because it's already tagged to the asset. So it's not like you're putting new asset information in there. You're looking at an existing asset and you're updating. Now that update gets into here, which then tells us, hey, do we need to move this up in priority? And it'll automatically do that. And then it'll start to price it out for you. Hey, in the next year, you're probably going to want to spend this much money because you have to address these things. So it allowed us to essentially turn other folks into, you know, inspectors, well, sort of, and to be able to get information from them, especially because they're already out on the sites. That's what allowed us to do the continuous facilities condition assessment, so that by the time that 5-year plan comes around, you still have updated asset information.
So it's like a live facility condition assessment in many ways.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I think that's an important thing. It's certainly something we're proud of. A vendor like Kahua has a limited amount of resources that they can put into development. But what's different about platform as a service technology, what you guys have demonstrated, is that we don't have to do all the development. We can let the ecosystem, we can let our clients, industry experts. You see, these are three folks that have careers in facility condition assessment, facility management, and capital programming in the K-12 environment, in institutional construction. So we always say we can't hire all the smart people. So we let all the smart people come and build things for themselves. So this has really panned out. At this point, I'd want to take the screen back to go back to our PowerPoint presentation, but I think our next thing was to show what you're doing with the master plan. Do you want to just, Christine or Jason, you want to keep the control and go right to that?
Yeah, Christine can do that part. Yes, sir.
Yep, I can keep going. So Cherie brought it up on the last slide, but essentially these numbers are going to be fluctuating as projects get done. So because 60% of it is coming from the condition of our buildings, the costs, these major costs that drop off, will highly impact how this prioritization is done. So this is the final scoreboard, right? So we've got all of our scoring categories up top, the FCI score being the most heavily weighted. So most of the ones that have the worst grades over here are going to be your highest totals on this side. Mira Loma does sneak in there because they have something else that's pushing it up a little bit more above El Camino. But for the most part, your buildings that are in the worst condition are going to be the first ones up. And then we summarize kind of all of it, right? So we've got the FMP costs that we show, the FCA costs, your FMP costs, but then our roadmap funding and priority is showing you here's where you could fall. You could either, go in, take care of all your assets at El Camino High School. A light mod might cost you 73 million, a mid mod, and these were all decisions that were, had district input on what are you wanting to see here. And I forget what the number was used for a light mod in terms of dollars per square foot, but these are really just saying, based off of their plan, your vision plan, what modernizations of existing buildings are you planning? Maybe you have some new construction in your campuses, and then what do you have as deficiencies that some of these costs may roll into a mod. So it really does then rely on what projects the district chooses to do based off of what they see on these pages. And then as those projects get done, like Cherie mentioned, there's an asset tag feature So everyone's going to be doing their normal oversight of the project. We've got at San Juan, they've got construction managers that oversee their projects, external and internal. And the teams in the field are responsible for uploading their project submittals and putting the tag as to what asset it is, where it's located, all that information. And we worked with the district on what their asset categories are, what their asset attributes are for each category. So all that information is standardized across the whole platform. And the legwork is not on the field teams and the updating. The legwork is actually on the initial setup, making sure that we have all the information there so that it's easy for them. They don't have to create new fields, create new categories. We do the legwork of getting that information in so that when they do have to go out in the field and they do have to upload a submittal for review by the architect, they're tagging it as the new HVAC unit on building A at Mariloma High School. And it's installed on this date. And then part of the process that we're rolling out with the team, because this started for them, they started doing this process in June. So the first project that was our pilot project, when they just finished a small modernization for that project. Part of their closeout process is now there's a checklist, and the checklist is going to say, okay, have you gone to your asset and entered in your serial number? Have you gone in and entered in your warranty start date? Have you gone in? So we're spoon feeding them. Here's what you need to enter in now that your project's done. Instead of giving us this jump drive that is probably going to get lost in a drawer, enter in the information that's really the information that we need to continue operating our projects after you guys walk away. So most of that heavy legwork is being done by someone else and not by those field teams, again, to make it easy for them.
It's a bit of an administrative job up front to set up that asset registry you talked about before. This project's going to have boilers and chillers and air handlers and switchgear. So that work's done, and it's invisible to the project participant for the most part.
They should be doing what they would normally be doing on a job. Yep.
So when they go to that submittal log and they are working the switchgear submittal, they simply associate it with the record you've already put in the system for switchgear. And then when there's an RFI on that switchgear, when it's being installed, that person that writing the RFI simply tags it to that same asset record. So any bit of information I can have about my asset is going to get collected along the way in a normal process.
Yep. The asset becomes that container that kind of travels through the course of construction from design. I mean, ideally, if you have your design specs for all of your assets that you want to collect and track, that's your guidebook to what your assets are, your attributes are as you get those new projects in. So we take that information, the asset then gets created in the onset, and then as you go through and you install it, or submit to install it, and you get that submittal package, then you're tagging it there, then all those documents that go to that asset get attached to that asset. Your O&Ms, your warranty information, your product data, all that information is going to now be attached to that asset. And then after you get to closeout, then all that post-construction type information, when it was put into service, all that information gets put in as part of your closeout. But again, you should be getting that information anyway. It's just before it was kind of clunky and not consistent and no real rigid way of collecting it and telling everyone this is how we want to do it. Everyone kind of just did it however they saw best, and it didn't really work for the owners most of the time. And
Awesome.
Cherie had no documents when she would get a project, and then first thing that O&M or maintenance and operations needs to go and address, and they don't have any of the information. People are scrambling, emailing the CM, the GC, hey, where's this submittal? We can't find it. So it's trying to be organized from the beginning and provide that guidance and setup throughout the process.
Yeah. And it's that same asset information that then feeds this master plan that you're showing us now. And you said that if we do some of this work, it actually comes off the list. Yep. What happens if a cooling tower on top of a building, has a problem and it has to be replaced? And while, by the way, the problem caused severe leak in the roof and that has to be replaced, that wasn't in my plan before. Does this automatically update as I add that information in?
Mm-hmm. So those assets, whatever you're replacing, if they originally had a condition that it was going to last another 5 years, then it may not have been impacting your overall costs in the next year, but now you're going to give it a new birth date. So it's not going to come up as something that needs to be replaced in 5 years anymore. It's now going to push that need out to year 15 or year 20.
And it may change the score for that building then.
It will.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the other thing is that you can add the assets anytime that you need to add them. So like you said, if you were up there replacing one thing and that asset wasn't a part of that project, you can add it in the middle of the project or, you know,
Yeah.
toward the end of the project, if that's what happened. You don't, you know, you can still tag assets throughout the whole time. You don't have to worry about that.
Okay, let me ask one more question, and then Mike, if we still have time, we'll do live Q&A.
Yeah, we've got some lined up. I gotcha.
Okay, excellent. I just wanted to ask this one thing. We've talked about how the foundation is laid now because we have all the asset information and we can tie it to the CMMS system and we can tie it to the model if we need to. We can tie it to the GIS tools that a district might use or an owner might use. So all that kind of registry, that underlay exists now. And on top of that, we've been able to create this facility condition assessment tool that's now continuous facility condition assessment and a living master plan. What else might you see coming forward in this? What might be next for this evolution of this solution?
Well, what is not in the public dashboard that we're putting in place for the district is the ability to add their escalation. So they'll have their selectors to select both escalation and if they want to add any additional contingency. There are contingency numbers and there's a lot of math put into a lot of these numbers in terms of what these costs are. But if there's a reason, you know, when COVID happened, no one anticipated the escalation that we experienced. And who knows, we could have another similar experience in the construction world where we have escalation. Right now, we've got tariffs that are wreaking havoc on all of our bids. So we want to make it a tool where the district can go in here and we'll be adding in your escalation and contingency slicers so that you could say, hey, I see my cost for 2024, but now I'm going to do a renovation in classroom 9 through 14 in 2028. And so they can select escalation to midpoint of construction. They'll have a slider to change their date of when this work would happen, and it'll update all the numbers that they have on their screen so that they can project out costs for a project if they're planning for a project that's going to happen 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. San Juan has a $950 million bond that passed in November. It's not going to be done in the next year or 2 years, right? They're going to be planning for several years into the future, and having a tool that's going to be able to project those costs out is absolutely necessary. So the public won't see that because we don't want them playing with numbers and saying, well, don't do that project in 5 years. It's going to cost you $2 more million. But the district and the folks that are planning absolutely need to have that. The other feature that was part of what we wanted to explore down the road is right now, we didn't click on this page earlier, but right now we've got the plans for each school site. The vision plans, existing and vision plans for each school site are from the architect. They're marked up, PDFs with some coding and whatnot. There is a integration with GIS that has already been done with Kahua and other partners. And part of it is just the appetite, right? And does the client want to move forward with something like that? Because it is an expense. Is it worth it? Is it not worth it? It may not be worth it for a San Juan. It may be worth it for a different type of client. So going down the road of let's not just tie these things to static 2D images. Let's get a 3D image of our building that has our assets located. If it's on the second floor, you've got a dot on the second floor in your GIS model. So that technology and integration is already there. It's just San Juan currently, it's not in the cards right now, right? We've got other initiatives we need to knock out before this becomes a priority. But those two things are probably, for sure we're doing escalation. GIS for maybe an iteration down the road might come into play.
Awesome. Mike, I think we've taken our time. We'll give the floor back to you if you want to lead us through some Q&A.
Yes, thank you. And I've got to tell the speakers, we've had an increase in attendees as if people were calling their friends and saying, you got to sign in and check this out. So that was good. And the attendees we do have, we know their names and things. We got some high level people who were interested in this talk, and everyone has stayed through. So thank you very much to the audience. If you have to leave now at the top of the hour, we understand. We thank you for your attendance, but we're going to go into extra time to address some of the questions. Cecilia Mowat had asked about transparency to the stakeholders, and I think that was addressed earlier, but I wanted to acknowledge that question.
Yeah.
Did a very good job of showing how that's available. But Cherie, do you want to add any more?
Yeah, just,
of that?
it's really important for us to be transparent with our stakeholders. And then the other thing is allowing them to select their school sites and select their areas. They may have a middle school or a high school, or they may have multiple kids. And then them being able to see the data and seeing what's going on and what we did with our dollars. Super important. And so it's going to be all transparent.
Are you getting any feedback from those parents that are
So
saying?
it goes live, and I was going to share that. It will go live on our district website, sanjuan.edu in June. It's going to go live. We do not have it forward facing yet. It's going the board just approved it on the 11th. And but we've had a ton of meetings with our stakeholders, a ton of engagement throughout this entire process, a ton. We went to school sites, we've done all kinds of things. And so people have seen it. They know it's coming.
And Cherie, if you just got board approval, you really have two constituent bases, those that are district employees and board members, and then all the parents and the citizens of the community. Your board approved it. They must have had some view of it in reaction to it. What have you heard from school executives and board members?
I think they were quite shocked and pleased. One of the things that everybody always asks is, how can it be sustained? I think that's one of the biggest questions is it going to still be alive and current data and not stale when it goes forward facing? That was one of the board members' questions. And we were able to answer that and share with them that this is already in the system. It's not something that somebody's going to have to do, because we are very shorthanded with staff here.
Excellent.
So Cecilia had another question about the impact on behaviors and attitudes. And we're really honored to have a view at this at its very early stage, but by the smile on your faces, I think.
I got a great story. So we were in a meeting with a lot of our construction people, sharing, and what we were doing is sharing the progress and everything. And I think I started the meeting out with the wrong idea. Don't do what I did. I started sharing out with what they were going to have to do during the projects, and how they were going to have to just simply tag it. That's all we're asking. We don't want you to do much. And one of them stood up and said, what is it in for me? And why do I have to do this? And at that moment, I realized, oh, wait a minute. Christine was on the screen because she wasn't in town. And I'm like, can you pull the dashboard up? And so instantly she pulled the dashboard up and we started showing the dashboard. And here's what I would say. You need to show them the final product. You need to show them why they are doing what they're doing and what that is doing. Because then that was an aha moment where we had all their buy-in. It was amazing to see the turnaround and the attitudes change, and we got to see it firsthand.
And is there any evidence, anecdotal, of the improvements? And you're short-staffed. I suspect this is going to help you achieve more with less.
I think that, really, yes. I mean, first of all, it's going to save the district a lot of money, because we're not going to pay $1.5 million to have to redo this, right? But the other thing is that what it's showing is it's telling people that we don't have to spend as much time driving 75 square miles from one end of the district to another. And we now know what our assets are doing, and that is so important. But it's getting it out there and doing steps. you have to do steps and you have to have that buy-in with everybody that's involved in it. One of the things I'll say for the maintenance and operations folks is that they were always wondering about the warranties and they could never get any information and they never knew when they could work on something. And that was always a complaint from them. They never knew, or, oh, construction just put this in and now we have to live with it. They're not having to do that as much.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Jason and Christine, have you been getting any comments or seen a lot of activity from certain people or projects?
Maybe a question, Jason and Christine, have you heard from other school districts or other institutional owners? Has there been interest in what you've been able to show them?
I'd say yes, not only for K through 12, but also other federal, state, and local agencies as well. So a lot of owners are trying to figure out what is the best way to do this. And I think in our opinion, it's changing the mindset, like prioritizing your assets both in construction and in maintenance is kind of the thing to do.
Well, that's excellent. And we will get you highlights from this presentation so you can share those out. And we'll have a lot of people that are watching this in the video form. So they'll get good information from that also. So Nicholas, unless you think there's any other closing question to ask everyone, we could maybe get final comments.
I'll give you a final comment from me, Mike. Just
Okay.
grateful to be part of the Asset Leadership Network. We're more grateful to be part of the solution to this problem that we've had in our industry for decades. And I'm personally grateful to Christine and Jason and Cherie, who are truly driving change in our industry. It always takes some special people to step up and do something brand new, something that others will scoff at to begin with. That's not possible. We've been doing it this way for decades. That's over. And it's over in large part because 3 really smart people got together and allowed us to be part of that walk with them. So just grateful to be part of all this. It's really exciting.
We are equally grateful for your organizational membership and for bringing in these leaders. This is what this is about. And like I said, the audience that we have, we know our top leaders who are learning from others what is possible. Nowadays, things are happening so fast. The technology advancement is quicker than you can even realize. And sharing this information, thank you very much, Christine, Jason, and Cherie, and Nicholas. This has been great.
Thank you for having us.
All right. We'll just end here, and thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week on ALN Thursday at 3.
Thank you.
Bye.
Now,
Great job.